Hi and welcome back to another episode of World's Best Gardens. This week we're looking at Sissinghurst Gardens. It was a garden created by Vita Sackville-West and her husband Harold Nicolson. Okay, so we entered the property. It's a National Trust property. It was opened to the public by National Trust in 1967 and it was bought in 1930 by that couple. And when they got here, it was pretty much a rundown old Elizabethan Victorian sort of house. It was advertised as basically a work in progress. So when they arrived here, it was a major undertaking to do the garden. So Harold and Vita were married, but their marriage was open and they were both a little bit promiscuous, you would say, in their marriage. So as we go through the garden, you can sort of see this building in front here is called the Tower. And this was a lookout, and the tower has been used to look out for invading people. In the early 1500s, it was basically a Saxon pig farm. So it was Saxon, and Hurst means forested area. The castle bit actually came in later in the 1700s when it was used as to house French prisoners, and they were called it the Le Chateau. So that castle bit had sort of stuck to it. So you can see this is the sort of the tower lawn area. And we just had a look at a little pond in the corner there. It was quite nice. Now, one of the big features for Sissinghurst, and it's well renowned for, is the White Garden. And this was a garden that sort of was developed later on. This garden was initially called the Rose Garden, and they moved the Rose Garden to the other side. Now, when we were visiting here in around about mid-August, the White Garden wasn't looking as good. There was a few weeks of drought, and you can see it's not quite as the arbour there isn't sort of fully flowering with roses, but it still looked reasonable. And this one here, the Thunbergia Susie was looking good in the nice pot, and we've got things like the grey foliage as well from the silverleaf pear that we saw before. Now this is a nice white phlox plant that was a real standout in the garden at that sort of time. So when you visit gardens, they're always a little bit sort of, at different times, different things are flowering. So early to mid-spring would probably be the best time to visit that garden. This garden here is called the Orchard. Now apparently there's a lot of rubble underneath this ground, so therefore they basically allocated it as an orchard. We're now heading to the Rose Garden, and the Rose Garden is just sort of set out with little formal hedges, and really it's not really just a rose garden. A lot of the plants are it's a mixed planting, and again, not too many roses that were flowering at this particular time, just a few. I thought this was a really nice feature as you step up to these two urns and a nice lutein seat at the end, and yeah, it was good. You can see the tower in the distance there, getting a better sort of view of it. The gardens really, obviously in the 1930s, were influenced by designers like Gertrude Drekel. This particular we're looking now at the Lime Walk, and it is quite a nice avenue of lime trees. And these are the tilia, and this was set out by Harold Nicolson. This was one of his projects. And then after the lime walk, it leads into the nuttery, and the nuttery is kind of almost like it's got various cob nuts in here, and lots of ferns. So it's kind of a little bit shady in there. So that it's a really good place to grow ferns and plants that like less light. So overall, the gardens are around about 5 acres, the ones we're going to walk around, but the property itself is around about sort of anywhere between 450 acres, I believe. So this is right at the end now of that particular 5-acre garden. We're looking at the herb garden, and this was just a little seat at the end of it, and it's surrounded by this watered moat that just sort of goes around the side. Not sure why that was placed. Maybe that was part of the older garden to sort of give it a bit of protection from invading armies. I'm not quite sure about that. But yeah, the day we went was kind of a little bit overcast and a little bit windy. And now we're going to go back up the garden. This is now what's called the Moat Walk. and we're kind of just looking down, sort of at the top, looking down now. And there was lots of really nice little perennials in here that were growing, lots of colour. So it's quite a pretty little border down here that was looking probably at its prime. It's funny, like as we walk around the gardens, certain gardens were looking better, and it's sort of like, you know, if you miss out on the white garden, then the cottage garden was looking at its best. So a few climbers on the wall, lots of tall brick walls, creating sort of sheltered rooms. And creating these rooms was a very sort of popular thing back in the 1930s, similar to Hitcot and of gardens of that nature. And obviously, Great Dixter has sort of similar kind of rooms as well. So a lot of straight lines in the borders, and the taller and formal clipping of the hedges. So you've got the yew hedges and the box hedging, and this was the cottage garden. This was looking really good with lots of bright reds and oranges. Some lobelia there. We've got sunflowers and rudbeckias, all kind of sort of giving you that bright reds and golds. It's quite a standout sort of garden, this one, and it was looking great in that mid-August period. So, Verbascum. Now, originally, when they started this garden, they didn't have like huge amounts of money, so Vita, as she was called, actually had to go back out to do writing and make more money to pay for all the garden upgrades. And they, having bought it in 1930, they opened the gardens up to the public in 1937, just for about 2 days a week. But they became quite a popular garden to visit, and even now today it's a very, very popular, famous garden. This was the Delos garden, so this was based on their visit to Delos, which is an island in Greece, and giving you this sort of Mediterranean feel with olive trees and plants of that nature, thymes, and just one of the gardens that they created. And this garden I thought was looking really good. This is the purple border. So at the time, Gertrude Jekyll was pretty much don't use purple in borders, and Vita and Harold decided no, we're going to go against that, and we're going to put a purple border. And I think this was actually one of the best borders. It's a very pretty border with lots of different plants in there. Lots of climbing roses and espaliered pears and fruit trees. And now we're just going to have a quick look to the vegetable garden. The vegetable garden was put in later, and this was to help supply the restaurant with fresh vegetables. It's all sort of organic gardening, and of course this is watered. One of the problems I did find out later on was that the gardens themselves are not watered, but the vegetable garden is. And of course, if gardens are not watered, they can sort of tend to die off a little bit quicker. Okay guys, it was a really cool garden to go and visit. I would certainly recommend it, and I'll just leave you with a few snapshots of Sissinghurst, and we'll see you in the next video.